Good afternoon. It's a hot day, I think July 17th. This is Lee coming to you from Hillside Acres. It's hot. We're out in the garden and we're going to talk today. We're going to talk today about what I think is probably the most important subject of gardening that people overlook or don't understand. And that is what's going on under the ground and how plants grow and how they utilize the microorganisms in the soil. The things I'm going to tell you today are not opinions of mine. They're facts stated from some of the leading microbiologists in the world, markedly Elaine Ingham, who really got this ball rolling about 40 years ago when she discovered how these microorganisms relate to each other in the soil. This is not new technology. This has been around since the 80s. And there are gardeners that have been gardening like this since the 80s with an approach that never disrupts the soil and tries to plant in a way that is emulating nature without tillage. This can be done. It's a process that takes some time to build the soil. But first, what you need to understand if you're going to garden is what is soil, what is dirt. This earth is just a big rock of minerals, okay? And they're made up into sand, silt, and clay. Along with that sand, silt, and clay is organic matter. That's what makes up the entire earth. And it doesn't matter wherever you live, whatever type of soil you have, you can grow in that soil if the whole ecosystem exists in that soil. Even in clay soil, it has to be incorporated with some organic material to bring it to a level where there's food for these microorganisms. But first, let's talk about the minerals themselves. Sand, silt, and clay. Sand being the largest piece of rock that we think is very, very small. Silt, a little bit finer yet, and clay, the finest of all. And all these deal with water penetration in different ways. So the first thing you notice if you have clay soils is that water runs off pretty easily because it can't permeate the ground. There's no structure to the ground. It's easily compacted. Sand, just the opposite. Water goes right through it, but it's rarely retained because it drains completely out. So what you're looking for is a nice combination of things. You know, the sand, silt, and clay in combination with organic material. And you're going to have a particular type of soil and it's going to be different everywhere you live. If it's Mississippi or it's Michigan, New Jersey, California, all different soils, all capable of growing productive food. What needs to happen for microorganisms in the soil to exist are three main things. They need air, they need water, and they need food. When you disrupt the soil and you cultivate the soil, you destroy all of the decaying roots that have been in the soil, you destroy all of the worm channels that are in the soil, and you now negated the ability of that soil to retain and take in water. And you've completely disrupted all the systems and the aggregates that have been building in the soil. That's why tillage is a terrible thing. But to understand how plants utilize these microorganisms is a complete ecosystem that is underneath the soil in what's called the rhizosphere. It's not from top to down 6 inches, but it's in an area about 2 inches deep to 5 or 6 inches deep. It's where the majority of all the roots of your plants actually thrive and survive in. Some go much deeper, but most plants are working in that rhizosphere. The plants also need three things to grow, just like everything, just like us, everything. Air, water, food, okay? They also need the sun, and if they don't have the sun, they can't make it work. Nothing happens without the sun. Plants photosynthesize, and when they do, they create carbs and sugars, and they use about half of what they produce from the sun. And the other half exude sugars and carbohydrates into the soil at their root zone. If this soil has been what I'd call living soil and has had ample amounts of organic material incorporated in or added on top, now the food is there. So you have the food, you have the air, and you have the water. No-dig gardening works on the premise of top feed. I'm gonna get on my knees because I'm an old man. It works on the premise of top feed. You never do anything but add to the top of the soil. And when you're growing this food, you'd think, how can this work? You're just putting plants right in the dirt. You're not loosening the soil. It works. It works. Hey, look, grow onions like this. We're doing this without fertilizers, folks. We're not using anything to add to the soil, okay? Onions like this, tomatoes we've had for 2 or 3 weeks. Beautiful tomatoes already. Beautiful cabbages, broccoli. I mean, it goes on and on and on. The garden thrives when the system is thriving, but the system needs to be complete. It can't be without one of the links in the chain. The plants put the sugars and the carbs into the soil, and they also know that they need, say, phosphorus or calcium. They will attract bacteria to their root zone that is rich in phosphorus or calcium. This is the plant's intelligence to know what to put into the ground to attract what they need. They're now the fungi and the bacteria in the soil is attracted to that root zone, and then the predators of those fungi and bacteria, nematodes, protozoa, other microorganisms, are then attracted to where their food is, which is the root zone. They consume those bacteria and fungi, they poop out what they've got, and the organisms also are short-lived, so they just die, and the elements that are inside that are now in a form that the plant can take in. Without this life in the soil, you can have all these minerals in the ground and you are not able to have the plants uptake them because the cycle is not complete. There's death in the soil, not life. And when you have death in the soil and you don't have living microorganisms, you have to throw soluble fertilizers on that ground to grow anything. Walk out in a cornfield or a bean field, you can't grow out there without the massive addition of NPK, whatever it needs to have. And in addition to that, you now have a water system out here that's being tiled because the ground can't take the water to get the water away, and you're drawing a lot of pollutants into the water system as a result of that whenever you're doing that. That's a different subject. But understanding that the plants need those microorganisms to complete the cycle, and it's not just some of the microorganisms, it's fungi and bacteria alike. And there's shredders, there's pill bugs, there's earthworms. All this works when there's life in the soil. In a handful of living soil like I have in my garden here. 4 billion living organisms in my hand right here. 4 billion. That's just, an unbelievable number of things are going on in this soil, but we're constantly disrupting them with cultivation, herbicides, pesticides, soluble fertilizers. All these things are detrimental to the life in your garden. So at some point, if you wish to garden like this, without chemicals, without fertilizers, without any kind of inputs other than compost and organic material, composted manure, composted green litter from your garden, compost of all types, mushroom compost, lots of different types of compost, all good. And wood chips are great. This garden is a wood chip aisle garden, has been for 40 years. If you dig down in those wood chips, it's just full of mycelium, and all that fungal activity in the aisles works in conjunction with the roots that are in the beds. So it's a system that I think is working pretty well. But until you understand that the plant isn't drawing everything from the soil, it's actually giving to the soil so that the microorganisms in the soil can give it the nutrients it needs that's in a form that the plant can uptake. And that's because these microorganisms are using acids to break down these minerals that are in the ground that the plant can't use in that form. So it's just that simple. And it's nature. It's just we're putting plants where we want them to be, the type of plants we want, and we're managing them. But we're not trying to do it in a super neat way. We have lots of diversity in a garden. Plants are randomly spaced around. Some things are always in a bed, but lots of things are just random, and that's good. I gardened for almost 40 years before this became apparent to me that I need to get those plants out of the ground. They're stealing nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium from the ground, and I've already harvested that stuff. I'm going to pull them out. I did that for many, many years. Number one, never pull a plant from the ground. Cut it off. Onions, can't do that with an onion, right? You're going to leave a few roots in there, but that's it. Potatoes, you got to disturb the soil a little bit to get potatoes out of the ground. But tomato plants, cut them off. Kale, cut it off. Cabbages, cut them off. Let those roots decay, create cavities in the soil. Now you can get air infiltration, water infiltration. You're doing no harm, you're doing good when you leave a plant grow. So there are 4 major tenets to this type of gardening. And first and foremost, quit tilling. Years ago when I started this, I had a really nice horse Troy-Bilt tiller and I sold it, and I was glad to get rid of it. It was gone. I didn't need it anymore. Scratching the top of the soil, the top inch, scuffle hoe, raking, doesn't hurt a thing. Deep digging, inverting the soil, big damage being done always by that. The other thing is keep a plant growing on the soil as much as you can. If you take a crop out, get a cover crop in right away. Those plants growing are feeding the soil. They're feeding the soil. They're helping you. They're not taking away from the soil. And you need to keep the ground covered. If you look around my garden, everything's mulched. The onions were not, but they were fairly thick. No sunlight on bare dirt, bad thing. It gets way too hot. The microorganisms shut down when they get too hot. They need to stay cool, they need to stay moist. That helps with both respects, and it cuts down on weed growth. And speaking of weed growth, your tillage is your number one reason you have weeds in your garden, by the way. And the fourth thing is learning how to make quality compost. That's a subject that we could spend a couple hours on, and will this summer or early fall sometime, talking about just compost. But this is achievable, this type of gardening. It's gardening with nature and not fighting nature. It's just so damn simple. I don't know why people don't adhere to it, because you really just need to buy seed. That's what you need, and you just keep planting plants all the time. In the winter, I prep the beds before the winter time, and I cover everything, and they sit here idle. You're not going to grow any plants, but you also do not want the bare sun or the sun shining down on the bare soil. So keeping it covered in the spring, if it's a crop that I can plant into cover, I just plant it right into the mulch. If it's a plant that I need to seed in the garden, I'll rake that mulch away and compost it. And so it requires some materials that you have to have on hand to use, but if you're going to buy something, buy those materials. Don't buy chemicals, don't buy fertilizers, buy the things that you need to. If you have to buy compost, buy compost. Just check into it. Check in and get some references of people that have used compost from that area, because I've bought compost on one occasion for a garden I was setting up that looked really, really good. It was so full of purslane seed that it looked like I had started a purslane farm at this location. It was everywhere. So you would be aware be wary of that a little bit, and get some references if you're going to buy compost, or some people that have bought there before. So if you have a desire to grow some really quality food, or learn how to try to start, it's a process, folks. It's not something you're going to do overnight. I tell people 3 years. You can convert a yard into a productive garden in 3 years, maybe 2, it depending on what kind of material you're starting out with and what you choose to bring in. And you can maintain that level at that point. It's not rocket science, it's friggin' nature. That's all it is. It's just working with nature instead of constantly butting heads with nature. And it's a way more calming way to garden, knowing that your food is pure. Yeah, there's some work, but I mean, if you're really a gardener, this is where you want to be anyway. You know, this is where you like to be. So for me, it's not work. It's just supplying us with constant food in the summer and fall, spring. And in the winter, I'm thinking about next spring. You know, I'm ready to go after it again. So we'll talk to you later from Hillside Acres. This is Lee and Kat. We're checking out. See you the next time. Watermelons wound up in my, here, I gotta get on my feet. I didn't want to do that on camera. The living root in the ground. I bumped. I just went blank on that.
It's okay. You can cut it out.
Tillage was my, what? You mean to start over?
Yeah.
Okay.